Mr. President, Ray McGovern is here to brief you.
Good
All
morning,
right,
Mr.
Ray.
President.
What's happening here in Iran, Lebanon, Russia? It's just all spiraling out of control, or what? I don't know.
Well, Mr. President, you probably know a little bit more than I do about Israel and Lebanon and Iran, but let me tell you what we've pieced together from the intelligence community. When you talked to Netanyahu yesterday, that of course sets the parameters to what happens now with respect to how Israel responds to the Iranian full-fledged attack against military sites in Israel back on the 1st of October. Now, Netanyahu and you spoke. All we know really is that Jake Sullivan spoke with Dermer before you two spoke, and we're not real sure about what Israel will feel enabled to do now. I want to inject one thing that is really not extraneous, but that bothers us a good bit, and that is the subject of Iran nuclear. You'll recall, Mr. President, that since 2007, the intelligence community has been unanimous in saying that Iran stopped working on a nuclear weapon way back in 2002 and had not resumed work on a nuclear weapon. We're not talking about nuclear fissile material, we're talking about the weapon itself. That's still the case as far as we know. They haven't. But they're talking about, well, maybe they ought to change that situation. Maybe they ought to go ahead and get a nuclear weapon. Now, I think that if we put ourselves in Netanyahu's frame of mind, I think that he may believe that Iran has no option other than to go nuclear right now. And the implication of that would be that Netanyahu would take off after their nuclear sites, whether or not you gave him permission, whether you gave him a imprimatur to go ahead and do that. So that concerns us greatly because that could end up being a nuclear exchange, particularly if the Israelis serve up credible evidence this time that the Iranians have gone nuclear, have built a nuclear warhead, which is what they've pointedly avoided doing until now. So that complicates the situation. And we don't know what's going to happen next week or so, but you should know that Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, and Pezeshkian, the prime minister of Iran, are meeting tomorrow on the fringe of a conference there in Central Asia. That's new, that's different, that's very, very suddenly announced. And then, of course, the BRICS meeting is going to happen on the 22nd of October, just in 2 weeks. So all those things are happening. We believe, Mr. President, that Russia and China are urging caution on Iran. We believe that for very good reasons. They don't want a regional war. And we also think neither does Iran. Now, they're counting on contacts with, for example, Defense Secretary Austin and others, maybe Sullivan as well, to try to rein in the Israelis so that there is not such a provocation that Iran would have to respond to that.
Israel's going to retaliate. Trump would be president if we don't let Israel retaliate. He'll attack Harris. He'll attack her every day if I try to hold back Netanyahu.
It looks very much likely, and you would know better than any of us what Netanyahu said to you yesterday. But there is sort of a battle royale going on within Tel Aviv and West Jerusalem, namely between those who say, whoa, wait a second, we're not prepared to get into a regional war. We can't do that unless the United States assures us that they're in it with us. Now, that all depends on what Netanyahu believes he heard from you yesterday. Our take on this, for what it's worth, Mr. President, is even if you told him, look, don't hit the nuclear sites, Well, past behavior would indicate that's no guarantee that he won't do precisely what you told him.
Ray, you're going around and spinning circles here. I'm not sure what you're saying, but let's set the stage here. Netanyahu can tell me anything he wants to say, and I can disagree with him. But we are what 4 weeks away from an election.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 4 weeks away from election, and he isn't going to give a damn what I ask him to do. He's going to do it. He knows he can count on us to back him up, no matter what he does. Otherwise, Trump is president. Trump will say, "Yeah, I would. We should have given Israel support," and he knows he's got us. Netanyahu, he's calling the shots now, and he's got leverage now. That if Kamala wins the election, he won't have quite that leverage in 4 weeks. No, 5 weeks, and he knows that. And Trump, he will complain. We're going to back him. We're going to back him all the way, whatever the hell he does. Even though I urged him to show caution and not strike these targets and everything, but since when is he going to listen to me? Not now.
Well, Mr. President, that's precisely our concern. In other words, if that's the case, and we believe that it is the case, in these next, 3.5 weeks, he has carte blanche to do anything he wants. He's going to start a regional war in the Middle East. And the only thing that will stop this thing is if the Iranians show some caution, as is urged upon them by Russia and by China and by others. We don't know what Netanyahu's going to do, but he's the wild card here, and he could start a regional confrontation, conflagration, and you would be in the position of either supporting it full bore or not. One thing that you should understand, Mr. President, I'm sure you do, is that the map shows that Iran is quite some ways away from Israel, and their nuclear sites are dispersed throughout that very large country. They would need refueling. They would need U.S. refueling aircraft to get their aircraft into that airspace. So I don't know whether Secretary Austin is going to say, "Oh, okay, we'll do that." That will depend on hopefully what you tell him to do or not to do. But without that, Israel will be constrained to do a lot less and create much less havoc than they would otherwise. If they feel they have carte blanche, if they hear from our Pentagon that those refueling tankers are ready to go, you just give us the word, then they're going to go, and then we'll have a regional conflict, whether or not you wish it or not. And as you point out, he feels he's got you really in a very tight place here during these next 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's no secret that he does, but he thinks that Iran's going to just collapse, that people are unhappy and Ayatollah is unpopular, and I hear that from some other people. So it might be, like one of them 6-day war scenarios. Suddenly the whole scene changes.
Well, Mr. President, you're probably hearing that from the same people that told you that Putin was losing in Ukraine and that he couldn't possibly win. So please remember who told you what, when, and give credence to those people or not. We don't think there's any likelihood at all that Iran will implode, the more so since they have full support from Russia and from China. And indeed, there's a 20-year treaty in draft. My guess is that it may even be signed tomorrow between Iran and Russia, very close to a mutual defense treaty. They don't call it that, of course. It's a strategic closeness treaty. But that's going to be the kind of support that Russia gives Iran. And when we come right down to it, we believe those aircraft that keep coming from Russia into Tehran are carrying very sophisticated anti-aircraft systems and anti-jamming systems And so it may not at all be the way that Netanyahu may have boasted to you. The Israelis may take a very bloody nose if they attempt to go way down, way into Iran, fortified as it is by the most sophisticated Russian systems in existence, which are very, very accurate, can handle F-35s, we are told.
All right, and then what? Ukraine. The Russians haven't moved as fast as you predicted, right? They're stalemated now, right?
Well, I should point out what's happening in southern Lebanon, Mr. President.
Uh,
The Israelis are now shooting the UNIFIL troops, the UN interim forces people who are supposed to be peacemakers there. Yesterday they ran into a Irish battalion, and they had several tanks with them. And they said, "Okay, now you leave here. We're gonna take this over." And the Irish commander said, "I don't think we're going to move." And President Michael Higgins from Ireland weighed in real strong with other senior people, and finally the Israelis withdrew. Yesterday, or early today, actually, they killed 2 Indonesian troops, peacekeeping troops, by shooting into the headquarters where they were housed. So the UN has taken it on the chin once again. Over 200 UN employees have already bit the dust, so to speak, by hands of the Israelis. And I should warn you, Mr. President, that the media here are beginning to carry pictures of little children shot in the middle of the head or in the middle of the chest by Israeli sharpshooters. There was one doctor who volunteered in Gaza. He was from Pittsburgh, and he talked about one night in the emergency room. No fewer than 6 such children came in, all with a bullet exactly right here between the eyes. And not only that, but several are not only malnourished, but starving, and others, absent the medical supplies they need, die from things like lockjaw because they step on a nail. So these doctors, my point is, these doctors are getting a hearing now in our media, not only alternative media, but media that most people can access. And Israel is not looking very good. And the absence of restraint on their activity speaks volumes. A lot of people are blaming it on you and people in this administration who could rein in Netanyahu, but for whatever reason do not do that.
so that's all you got. Anything positive happening?
Well,
Zelensky's doing better, isn't he?
oh, no, he's not actually.
Oh,
I wish I had something better to give you, Mr. President, but just to finish up on the Israelis, they imprisoned and, by all reports, tortured a U.S. Reporter yesterday. His name is Jeffrey Lafredo. He worked for Max Blumenthal's outfit, the Gray Zone. So you have yet another U.S. media person, this one in prison, beaten up pretty badly, in addition to the 2 young women who were killed by snipers. So you have a lot of American citizens who are being done in.
wait a minute. The CIA, you're telling me you believe that propaganda?
Well, sir, it actually is not propaganda. These are all verified by international people who look at the autopsies and things like that. So this one.
What, that Israel killed an American? Is an American, that journalist, or he was writing?
Well, there was an American volunteer killed just a month ago. I briefed you on that. She was from Seattle.
Yeah, but what this new one there? You say is
this new one? He's a journalist for the Gray Zone, which is an outfit run by Max Blumenthal, and he was working and he reported some things the Israelis didn't like. And so they wrapped him up and they put him in prison. They beat him badly, and there he lies in prison kind of an eyesore for anybody who
How
uses.
we know that they beat them up? That's you getting
Well,
that? Where are we getting that from?
well, this is coming from the Israeli sources. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but it looks like this is it's SOP, Mr. President, standard operating procedure. This is what happens when they wrap up somebody and put them in jail. So I'll look up the sources for you and get back to you on that. But
All
I'm
right.
saying is something else that you need to be aware of and worry about. As for Ukraine, um, well, um, Project Ukraine is not going well. Um, the Ukrainian forces are either retreating or giving up or being rebuffed, knocked off those hilltops in the eastern part or the western part of Donbass. And the ones in Kursk are being wound up in a cauldron, and most of those are not going to see the light of day. So Zelensky is sort of flailing about. As you know, there was supposed to be a big meeting in Ramstein, and that's been canceled. So it doesn't really look good for the Ukrainians. As a matter of fact, nobody seems to be willing to give any hope. You may be aware that the Russian ambassador, after 7 years of service here, Antonov is his name, is leaving. He gave a exit interview, so to speak, to Newsweek, and it was pretty dreary and dim, saying that things were bad when he got here. Things are measurably worse now that he's leaving, and he talked again about mutual security. And when you come right down to it, it goes back to John Kennedy, who realized that there's no real security, national security, without mutual security, at least not in the nuclear age. And that's something that the Russians have been often saying here when they look at what we're doing in Ukraine. In other words, to put it in layman's terms, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them to yourself. Well, that's no longer just the moral rule. That's an existential necessity. In other words, if you don't live in the knowledge that other countries need to have security, there's going to be no security. And that's what Antonov is saying. Despite my efforts to increase or make better the relationship between Russia and the United States, I leave with a sour taste in my mouth because there's no indication that the U.S. has any idea that we feel insecure with what the U.S. is doing in Ukraine. Just say what.
Well, we want them to be insecure. Big deal.
Well,
right?
in a nuclear
We,
age,
we don't want them conquering other nations. They're not supposed to be a power anymore. That's the whole thing. Communism failed. Russia's history. It's toast. It don't matter. Doesn't matter. What are you? Look, I want to say, Ray, it's hard for me to focus because all I'm thinking is what could go wrong? What's going to happen in the next 4 weeks? That's
Okay.
how it works. After that, we win, we hold it, and we can talk, but we got to win, and we got to be in the win. We got to blast Trump as a puppet of Putin. Now, Trump says he's going to bring peace there. He's not going to back. We got to hit him on that, and we got to show we're tougher there. That's why I'm under a lot of pressure to release some of these weapons that could take out some of those Russian targets and everything. People tell me that's the best thing I could do for Kamala, and also on Iran. Kamala, she came out saying Iran's the biggest problem. I gotta back Netanyahu on Iran, otherwise that's going to hurt her in the election. What part of this don't you understand? I gotta show that Trump's a wimp. That's what she's showing. She's showing you could be a woman president and tougher than this bully boy guy, right? That's
Well,
the
Mr. President,
strategy here. She's being tougher. She even being tougher on the border, right? She's actually now turned that around on him. That's why she's winning this election. You're not going to mess that up, are you, Ray, with this advice you're giving me?
Well, I'm just trying to tell you just the facts, Mr. President. You're in the realm of politics right now. That's not my business. All I want to tell you is that there could be some October surprises that you're not even aware of. Let me tell you one that we think might be likely. When the BRICS people convene, they're going to be susceptible to all kinds of announcements. And one announcement could be that now there is proof that it was the U.S. that blew up Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Now, what would they cite? Well, they would cite the comments of a harbor meister in Denmark who was alerted that there were a couple of ships right before the explosion. There are a couple of ships that don't have their transponders on, and it looks like they may be in difficulty. And so his people went out in their ships to find out what was going on, and they found out these were two U.S. ships. This is just a couple days before the explosion. And they radioed back to Copenhagen, and people said, well, go back, forget about it. Don't say a word to anybody, Mr. Harbormeister. We have his name. I have his name written down here. I'll tell you later. Nielsen is his last name. Okay, so what happened? Well, he kept his peace until just 2 weeks ago. Then he confessed. They told me not to say anything, but this is what happened. Right next to those explosions, there were these two ships with their transponders off. Now, that's just one report, but I went through my files, Mr. President, and we found that 2 years ago, there was a corporate civilian satellite analysis agency that saw the same thing. Two ships in the same area and other U.S. ships by just a couple of days before the explosion. So when Seymour Hersh came out with his very detailed report, people seemed to not want to believe it. Now, most people with open minds have to believe it because of this firsthand testimony and because of the satellite analysis. And you may be faced with this, like maybe at BRICS, where they say, well, look what happened to Europe, given the fact that not only did President Biden, authorize this, according to Seymour Hersh, but that it ruined the economy of Europe. So it's better to stay with us BRICS here in Asia. Let's just look on and what happens in Europe now that they can't get any more cheap gas. I just add one more thing. That is the current foreign minister of Poland, Sikorski is his name, Radek Sikorski. He was just a member of parliament at the time. But the day after the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline, he did a major tweet or an X, and he said, "Way to go, America! Thank you, America." So there are lots of other people who kind of realize what the story is on that. This could be highly embarrassing, and the ability of the mainstream media to treat Cy Hersh, star reporter at one time for the New York Times, as a pariah is going to be receding as soon as this information gets out. I wanted to tell you first, it's 2 weeks old. It's been in Politiken, the Danish newspaper. It indicates that not everything's rotten in Denmark. One honest man came forward, and that could really cause real problems for you, Mr. President. If that comes out before the election, you'll have to react one way or another.
Well, I'm not going to react, but it's not going to hurt us with the voters that we took out the Russian pipeline and retaliation for, whether they believe it or not, for what the Russians did in Ukraine. But look, Ray, I don't know what to take from this report. But the main thing is, whatever happens, right? It's not gonna throw the election to Trump, right? We're gonna look tough. We're going to look strong. We're going to look like we're active, and he's going to look like a wimp because he's a buddy of Putin. And we got a lot of ads running that are going to make that argument. So let the chips fall where they may. And after we win the election, then we could talk about, trying to make it a safer world. But right now, being tough is the name of the game. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
President, just
I'm
a
sorry you
word.
don't want to hear that, but that's what this is all about now. Can a woman candidate who's polls well? That's what's good. We're hitting them on the abortion issue. That polls well. But is she Margaret Thatcher or not? And that's what Hillary Clinton did. She had to come on real tough. What Gaddafi? We saw, we came, he's dead.
Mr. President, with all due respect, Hillary Clinton lost.
Yeah, that's right.
An
But
informal
yeah,
survey here where I live now indicates that most people, well, the people who will vote for Trump will vote because he promises to end the war. Now, whether that's realistic or not, certainly not going to end it in one day, but it
yeah,
appeals to a lot of Americans. So, Hillary lost, Margaret Thatcher won, but Margaret's a long time ago. Uh,
yeah.
Most people think that
Well, Ray, I don't go to you
like
for
this.
political advice because
Okay.
it's all wrong all the time. And I'm just telling you, Netanyahu knows, and I urged him not to go too far, but he knows he's got us where he wants. And the day after the election, I could get tough with him, but not before. Not before, and I'm not going to, stop Zelensky now. He wants to fire some missiles. I'm going to have to let him do it
Whoa.
because, it's the election, and you will agree, Ray, that Trump wins, and it's going to get terrible, right?
Mr. President, I want to make sure that I
Tells me
heard
I'm
you
a
right.
criminal because of my son and his dealings in Burisma in Ukraine, and it just drives me crazy.
Sure.
Uh,
Well, Mr. President, I just want to make sure I heard you right. 3 weeks ago, you turned Tony Blinken down on his suggestion and the suggestion of Starmer, Prime Minister of Britain, that these missiles that of longer range to hit deep inside, well, not deep, but 300 kilometers inside of Russia would be authorized. Have you changed your mind on that?
I'm not going to go with that. All I'm saying is we're not going to show weakness. This is what happens in an election, and the way you can get the Democrats. And when it drives me crazy, Ray. We are we are more aggressive for war than the Republicans. What war have we turned down? We go for all the wars. We even backed them when Bush 2 was in there. We backed them.
Mhm.
Democrats. I backed them when I was in the Senate. So we get that rep though. We're supposed to be for peace or something. We're not. We're not.
Well,
But in an election, we got Trump now. We got him because he's this right. We're gonna keep saying he's this buddy of Putin, and but he could get us on Israel because he's supposed to be more pro-Israel. I don't know how he got that, but we can't be weak there. Hope Netanyahu doesn't go too far, but you try stopping Netanyahu. It's not possible. He's fighting for his political life. He don't give a damn what happens. All right,
wait,
wrap it up, Ray.
one
It's
last point.
depressing. Yeah,
One
go
last
ahead.
point, then. One last point. You're of the view that being strong and being for war is an electoral advantage. That's why I could see that you are so well. I say so accepting of the notion that Netanyahu will disregard whatever advice you gave him yesterday and start a regional war. Now, I'm saying that slowly, Mr. President, because the question of a regional war in the next 3 weeks is something that you need to calculate, and so does your vice president, because I'm no expert, but I don't think a regional war right during the election is something that would redound to those who could have prevented it. And that, Mr. President, is you.
Yeah. Got it, Ray. Don't run for office.
I won't.
All right? Yeah. What did somebody say? No one ever lost by underestimating the stupidity of the American people or so. I forget the phrase.
I
You
think
remember that
Winston.
one?
I
Huh?
think Winston Churchill said that the Americans can always be expected to do to choose the worst alternative of the several offered before them. I hope he's wrong. He was wrong about some things, but on power politics, he often was right, unfortunately.
All right, let's cut it there. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. President.